Okay, here we are again with Drake on the East Coast, Thea down in Southern California, me, Anne up here in Northern California. And last time we got together, we talked about organized religion. And again, I want to just briefly preface this dialogue, just like all the others, with an explanation of why we're doing this. It's really just an examination. It's asking questions. It is an attempt to find perhaps new language for a growing, ever-expanding consciousness as I understand, are moving into a new age. And so here we are again. We spoke about organized religion last time. And while I have a great deal of respect for the practice of organized religion, all that it offers, a foundation of morality and a guideline for growing positive living, I also see some downsides to it. And what we discussed last time was the tendency sometimes to get stuck in a fixed set of beliefs which don't then promote continued examination and looking at things from a new perspective, which then in turn doesn't support learning. And for us to expand our consciousness, for us to continue moving forward and grow, we need to keep learning. And so following that, I'd like to discuss just briefly in this brief conversation, what I see as a kind of new secularist religion called Scientism. And it's a term that is being bandied about more and more these days, it's a distinction between actual science, which is a method of observation and measurement and theory based on those observations and measurements and experiments, versus a doctrine. And before we started recording, Drake and I were talking a little bit about my experience, and I think we've all had this experience where whether it's climate change, whether it's medicine, vaccines, or really any area of where science has brought us to an understanding and a practice and a theory, I'm finding that when people challenge those theories, whether it's in social media, online debates, or in person, often even if I, for example, provide studies that challenge the consensus, the response will be, it's science. Don't you understand science? Do either of you have this experience?
Something that came up for me when you were talking, Anne, was the way that people appeal not so much to the method of science, but to science as some sort of credible, accepted institution, right? That like things need to be peer. And
can you say that again? You cut out. That they need to be what?
Peer reviewed, and pass through a certain like number of tests or examinations before they are accepted as, science. And in thinking of like what it means to challenge that practice, because really, if one's going to have faith in a methodology, it seems to me that you need to actually examine what that methodology is taking for granted, like what a certain type of methodology is taking for granted. And something that I've been learning over this past year as my education has continued is that every single science has its presuppositions that it maybe can't prove, that it has to take for granted. I wouldn't pretend to know anything very complex about any of these sciences like biology or physics or chemistry. But I do know that, or I think I know that, for example, biology takes the existence of life for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it goes back to very basic presuppositions that it has to assume that science can't work. And I think there's other suppositions that kind of weave themselves into the method of science. And if those aren't examined, then I think science can result in wrong conclusions. Like I think of like if you're trying to draw two parallel lines and it's a little bit off in the beginning, then a mile down the road it's going to be way off.
Right.
Way well. And something I thought of that I learned about last semester was a guy named William Harvey in England, who basically figured out that the blood was a system of circulation. You know, he figured out that the heart pumps the blood through that it passes around the lungs, then it goes through the other, different ventricles of the heart, goes through the entire body, and then circulates back to be reoxygenated. And he figured that out by questioning the established doctrine of time, which was Galenism. And because Galen said, no, the heart does this specific function only, and that was it. And that was the accepted thing in the universities. And Harvey started he started dissecting animals and going, actually, that doesn't make sense. Like, he had to question the method of the practice of the anatomical science at the time to make this breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And so seems like that should still apply.
And we could then take that same gesture or standpoint of not just going with what you're given, is that you have to continuously be testing and making observation about your practice of religion, your practice of science, or the method of science.
Drake just left us for a moment.
Yeah, see that.
Oh, sorry, something's...
Okay, he's back.
So I was just saying that it seems like that's the same sort of point that we were talking about organized religion, is that stay awake and pay attention, that you don't hand over your own seeing to another. And in terms of the practice of science and observation, that has to continue, recognizing this is a presupposition, this is where we're starting from, but that's not the whole totality of whatever it is we're observing or studying, because you're given this a presupposition to start from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I agree. I try to constantly question, and but even within those sciences which are founded on a presupposition, I'm seeing a dangerous lack of critical thinking when people are working with these theories, discussing these theories. Let me give you go on a little bit of a tangent. There is a lawn sign I have been seeing a lot up here. I don't know if you guys have something similar down there, which says, there's a few statements. I find it absurd. It seems like a virtue signaling type of thing. But it says something like, women's rights are human rights, Black Lives Matter, love is love, whatever that means, and science is real. And science is real. What does that mean? And so, that's what I'm focused on right now. It's beyond the fact that, Drake, what you're saying is absolutely true. We need to constantly question even the foundations of our working theories. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck in a more and more narrow framework of theory So we have to constantly question even its foundation, re-examine it. But beyond that, we have to recognize that science itself is simply a method. It is not a truth. It is not I don't really even know how to get my head around saying something like science is real. I don't understand it when people say to me in response to me challenging challenging germ theory even, right? We are developing a new understanding of our immune system and the human microbiome, virome, and the fact that the environment of our body is a huge factor in terms of whether or not one person contracts a disease versus another person who is exposed to the same virus or bacteria, right? So that is shifting, that is growing, that is expanding. We're developing an understanding of this. When I present this information or present studies that demonstrate, that challenge the idea that, oh, it's just the germ that makes someone sick, someone will say, it's science. Don't you get science? Without even having to discuss the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's funny because
go ahead.
Sorry, it seems like they're not even discussing the science then, because the science is just a chain of reasoning within a certain set of, like to do science is to reason your way with certain parameters that you know, at least in modern science, that you've set for yourself, and to conclusion that follows. So to make it, when you're talking about these lawn signs that are saying science is real, that sounds to me like putting a sign in your lawn that says, you know, logic is real. Like, absolutely, logic is real, but logic can be wrong. You can have conclusions that are logically true, but if your premises are wrong, the logic is false. Mm-hmm. You know, like, so same thing. If a chain of reasoning is real, yes, it's definitely real, but it can still be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the combination of statements on the sign is curious to me. What does science have to do with, you know, rights of human beings having the right to be and be safe, you know? But also it also then leads to that thought that that's really just science, that science is real is a belief. So it is now outside of the scope of logic or reason. Saying science is real is like, sounds like a doctrine. Like,
not science.
Yeah, and I don't remember now I think there was a climate change statement on that one too, right? So, you know, that's where for the sake of time, we won't get too much into it, but that's where I am wanting to explore this. What I do see is it's kind of a new religion. So scientism often is there. It includes the doomsday prophecy of climate change, right? I'm not on any level suggesting that the climate isn't changing. But whereas peak oil theory was scientism's doomsday theory prophecy in the noughts, right? The 2000s. Now it seems like it's climate change. We've got to change our ways, right? It's kind of it's the new religion's apocalyptic prophecy and warning. So we've got that going on, and then we also have this very fixed set of beliefs that what I am seeing, I see the priests of scientism. I'm not saying the good ones. The good scientists, the good doctors are always examining, are always questioning, right? But I am seeing people grant authority over over themselves. I think they are giving the authority to doctors, to scientists, to the experts, to tell them what is and what isn't, what they should and shouldn't do.
Creating their reality. there.
In a similar way that the downside of organized religion, I think, handed that over to the priests.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, I mean, just again, for the sake of time, we're coming up to 15 minutes, and I know Drake has to get going. But I think this is something to examine. I think that for all of the secularist focus on rejection of organized religion, to me it seems as if they simply replaced it with a new religion.
New authority, right?
It's a new authority. So that's what it is, Drake. It's a new authority. Whereas God and the priests are not their authority. Science as a god almost.
Well,
And the priests of that scientism is the God, is the authority. Is that right?
I wonder, yeah, it's like, it seems very comforting to me to think of people who don't screw up, you know, like I didn't grow up in organized religion, so I guess I didn't grow up with a conception that there's always someone watching out for me doing the exact right thing of a God figure or a priest figure. But a lot of people that I speak to in discussion lately talk about science as if it's some group of people somewhere who don't mess up.
Yeah.
And that's right. Like that's nice to think that there's might be people that don't mess up, but it's not true.
Well, because it's taking it from the religious realm where there was faith involved and the unseen to the realm of it's reason and logic, and that is above all what we can trust, and it's real. So it's interesting because we do believe in reason and logic, and those are good. But like you said, Drake, if the beginning realm that the reason follows is off, then you have something that's false, and now you have people believing it or saying it's real in particular arenas.
Or simply if we missed something in our observations that we then finally pick up. Well, that's going to change the working theory, and that's going to change the entire model, right?
Can I say one more quick thing? The thing that always, I mean, and I'm not of science is not my practice. I mean, observation is though. So I guess in one way it is. The thing that has always blown my mind learning the scientific method was that you could only test that which you could conceive of. And so everything is limited there in terms of creating theories and working theories. It's only based upon what you already know or think you know. And that right there is like, what? So.
Right. Your own reality. It's only based on the reality that you can observe at that moment, right?
Right.
And as we all know, even from the time, like we said in the last one, to the time you're 5 years old to the time you're 75 years old, our consciousness, our perceptions, our realities change, right?
Yeah.
We perceive more differently, right? So the same goes every day.
Right.
So anyway, let's get going and pick this up, I think, next time as we're formulating the discussion for next time.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. Let me stop recording. You too.